Hi and welcome to Comfort Dad Cooks. On today's show we'll be making a special Christmas gingerbread and we'll be serving it with homemade vanilla ice cream. Essentially what we're going to do is create two mixtures, a mixture of wet ingredients, a mixture of dry ingredients, and then combine the two. What we're going to do here is start with some molasses. Now in England, where this recipe originated, we have something called treacle. You can buy it in a couple of specialty delicatessens and grocery stores, but I've found if you mix molasses with a mixture of syrup, you can get something broadly approximating treacle. Now, molasses is pretty sticky stuff, and especially at this time when it's quite cold, it can be extremely viscous and difficult to pour. I remember a company I worked at some years ago sold a product called sorghum, which is a type of sweetener. And it was winter time, and even though they tried to warm up the tanks of sorghum, they couldn't actually pour it. It was more like a sort of sticky solid. So it always reminds me of that at this time of year. So what we're going to do is we're going to warm together some butter, some milk, and you can use soy milk if you prefer, some syrup, and also some molasses. So what I'm going to do is take a pan, put it on my scale. I've already measured 8 ounces of butter. You can use for this a vegetarian margarine or a vegan margarine if you prefer. It will work absolutely fine. So there's 8 ounces or about 250 grams of butter. Now we are going to just tear out the T-A-R-E, not T-E-I-R, the scale here. Now what we're looking for is 3/4 of a pound, 12 ounces, 300-ish grams of total liquid, I guess you would say. It's a viscous liquid if it were treacle. And I've found if you use about 8 ounces of molasses, just regular molasses, not blackstrap molasses, that flavor is too strong. So we put 8 ounces of molasses in here. It is a little bit like watching paint peel or molasses pour, but you want about 8 ounces. You want to just hit it broadly on the mark. As my friend used to say years ago, we're not building a piano. So if you hit just around about 8, then you're fine. 8.1. Okay. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to take about 4 ounces of golden syrup. Golden syrup is another wonderful sweetener we have from England. And you can buy this more readily than you can buy treacle. But again, it's pretty thick stuff, and what you want to be doing is hitting about 4 ounces of this stuff, 125 grams is 4 ounces, into this mixture. It's just trickling out here, trickling molasses. There we go, 4 ounces. So bring this up to a total of 12 ounces. And then what we'll do is we'll add that in a pan here. I always remember, we'll do this in another Comfort Dad Cooks episode, but we used to sometimes have sticky toffee pudding or syrup pudding with custard. And we used to, there we go. We used to have that with custard on a Sunday lunch after having had roast beef or something. And then we would have a little bit of extra syrup poured on top, and it was pretty special and pretty sugary. Okay, so in here we've got 8 ounces of butter or margarine, about 8 ounces or half a pound of molasses, and then about 4 ounces of golden syrup. You can buy this particular brand from, I believe you can get it from Amazon actually. Okay. Now what we're going to add to this is half a pint, 1 cup of milk. And again, you can use soy milk if you prefer. And then we're going to bring that to a gentle simmer. You don't want to really cook it. What we're trying to do here is to just gently melt the margarine and to make the syrup and treacle or molasses mixture less viscous. So let's just put that there, and then I can keep an eye on it. Now what we have here is a super duper size mixing bowl, and to that we're going to add a pound of sifted cake or all-purpose flour would be okay. You want something that has a low gluten content if possible. Something like a bread or a pizza flour would tend to be too glutinous for this recipe. Okay, so to that we're going to add 2.5 teaspoons of powdered ginger, and 1 tablespoon of baking powder, and about 3/4 teaspoon of baking soda. You'll find that you probably want to do more baking soda in the wintertime when the dish naturally needs a little bit more lift. Now the flour is sifted. I always sift flour whenever I'm baking to get rid of any lumps and to make sure that you've got the finest product available. And then we just mix that together. We've got the treacle and butter mixture here just warming through, and the butter will start to melt. And the advantages of weighing the pan and then adding the syrup and the molasses and the butter and the milk to it is it's much easier to do that and put them in the container in which you're warming them than to try and put them in another container and then have the fun and games of getting the molasses out of there. And then to the mixture here, we're going to add 6 to 8 ounces of sugar. This is just raw cane sugar, and we mix that in there. Now while the mixture is warming up here, what we're going to do is take a cake tin, a 9-inch cake tin, and we can just add a bit of butter on the bottom here so that we get the baking parchment sticking nicely to the bottom of the cake. Spring cake form is what I think this is called, cake tin. Just put that in there. It's like when you move house, all the smaller things, the fiddly things are the ones that take the time. So we have got the spring-loaded cake form here, and what I'm going to do, although it's non-stick, is to just butter around the edges. This is the best tool in the kitchen, your hand, for mixing. Not too great for chopping, I admit, but just to get stuck in there is great. Clean hands, and then this in there. Now what I like to do here is to just sprinkle a bit of flour, and then do it this way so you can see what I'm doing. Mix the flour into there. Right, that's that. Now we just wait for this to melt. Now I'm going to be carrying this through to my oven in just a second, and I just have a aluminum baking tray with a silicone mat on there, and then that's easy to carry. Just wait for this to melt here. This is such a great cake to have. You can keep it as a cake to just have with a cup of tea. It's delicious as a dessert. You can mix a handful of raisins. You can even soak those raisins in tea, or if you don't mind a tipple, brandy would be great at this time of year. And mix them into the flour once you've added the liquid to that. So it's coming up to melting point here. Just finishing off the butter. You can serve this with whipped cream. You can serve it, as we will today, with homemade vanilla ice cream. It's absolutely delicious. You can experiment once you've got this recipe and you've made it once or twice. You can try adding a little bit of oatmeal in exchange, pinhead oatmeal, small oatmeal, in exchange for some of the flour, so you end up with a more, I guess you would call it rustic, sort of substantive cake to have. But absolutely delicious. So it's just coming up to the final bit of butter melting here. Okay, so we've melted the butter, and as a result of that we've warmed up the milk, and we've also made the syrup and the molasses less viscous. Now with cakes where you've got a leavening agent, you've got to move quickly at this point. So what we're going to do is take the liquid mixture and add that to the solids there, the flour mixture that we have before. So we'll put that out of the way. Now with cake batter like this, you want to mix it, but we're not kneading bread or pizza or something, and we're not trying to develop the gluten which would tend to make it hard and brick-like. We're just mixing it enough to bring those ingredients together. If you have used the mixture I suggested of molasses and syrup, you will have something that looks like this. If you've used only molasses, it will be darker. If you've used only syrup, it will be a lot lighter than this. So that is ready. Just make sure at the bottom of the container you don't have a whole wodge of flour just stuck there waiting to trick you once you pour it in. So we put this into the dish here. This is going to be about an hour in the oven at 350 degrees. We've pre-warmed the oven. 350 degrees is, I think, 180 Celsius. It's funny, when I lived in England years and years ago, of course I got used to the imperial system. Then I moved to live in Europe and I got used to the metric system. Now I live in the States. I got used to the metric system, to the imperial system, but also a system that is slightly different. So a pint in the US, for example, is different than a pint in the UK. I can work with any measurement system. I really like the metric one. Then you just tap down that a couple of times to release any air bubbles. Now I'll be taking this through to my oven and you'll see there how I load it up. So just 1 second and we'll be there together. So we're in the kitchen now, and I'm very grateful to my lovely daughter Sequoia for helping me with this. So we've got the oven set to 350. Now it says 355, and the reason for that is that I use an oven thermometer, and I want the oven to be 350, not the oven's own internal temperature. So I've set it to 355 because that equals 350, and then I'm putting some baking parchment on the top of the tin here. Put that up. Now we want to leave this for about an hour cooking, and we're going to set the first timer for 45 minutes, and then we're going to see whether it's cooked. We'll use we can use a toothpick if you want, but you can also use instant read thermometer to see whether the cake batter has cooked in the center. So we'll be back in 44. There's a nice number. Okay, back again. Let's see if it's cooked. Now when you open an oven, especially if you're kneeling down paying homage to the oven, as you open the door there's a sudden blast of air and steam will come out. So just sit back, let that pass, and then we take the top off here. Now that is looking pretty good. Not quite ready, but we can see it's coming out, still a little bit of cake mixture on. So let's try another 10 minutes and we'll be back shortly. Okay, we're back, and let's see. This kitchen smells divine at the moment. Perfect. The thermometer or the toothpick, the electronic toothpick is coming out. Perfect. Okay. Now what we're going to do is leave this in the spring form here for a few moments to let it cool a little bit, and then we're going to open the spring form and we'll be serving it. One thing that you can do with this particular cake is that you can cook it for less time so that the inside is more like a sort of gingerbread chocolate lava cake without the chocolate, a gingerbread lava cake, and you can serve that. You can also use individual ramekin dishes to cook this. So we'll be back in a few moments. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. We have our cooler ginger cake and we're going to open the form now. I just put this on a wire rack to cool down, but we can take that off the wire rack here in just a second. So we open up the spring form and you can put that over here. Now I usually just put this onto the baking board, onto the chopping board here. Now what we're going to do is to take the bottom layer of paper off here onto the chopping board. Okay. Right, we will take a slice here. I always like using a palette knife to get the first slice of cake out so it doesn't collapse everywhere. Oh, that looks so good. Now then, ginger cake. Now, there's a couple of ways you can serve this. As I mentioned, I've used ice cream today. You could have it with whipped cream. I make a really good eggnog ice cream where I substitute some of the milk and cream inside the ice cream mixture. We'll do it on a future Comfort Dad Cooks for a bit of eggnog, and it's absolutely delicious. Now, the one thing I'd like to demonstrate today is something that's used in professional kitchens called quenelling. And you're forming a quenelle. You take 2 spoons, you heat them in hot water, you shake off the excess, and then what we're going to do is to just form this into a very nice shape, and then we can put that on the side. You don't have to do this, it's just a nice way to present it. You could just put a dot of ice cream or fresh cream on there. Whipped cream is particularly delicious. So let's see how this tastes. So let's have a look here. Bit of ice cream, ginger cake. Oh, the smell is absolutely divine. Wow. I've made this cake for about 35 years now, and every single time I make it, it's absolutely wonderful. So, sticky treacle originally, but molasses and golden syrup, served with vanilla ice cream, an absolutely wonderful dessert. I know where this cake is going next, and I'm sure that my kids are hungrily awaiting the end of this particular episode. But I encourage you to try this as a dessert over the forthcoming Christmas holidays. It's absolutely wonderful. And thank you for joining me on Comfort Dad Cooks today.